if Vader stopped Alderaan's destruction? Part 2. Yup, that's right everyone, you heard that correctly. Welcome to the first episode of the Bantha Stew Sequel Week Spectacular, where we'll be releasing one video per day for 5 days in a row, all sequels to some of our most popular videos. Today we'll be diving back into the story about what would happen if Vader had stopped Alderaan's destruction. So grab a glass of blue milk, cuddle up on the couch with your pet Tauntaun, it's cold out right now, and let's dive right into the story. Where we left off in the story, the galaxy was in a strange place. The Empire, in the absence of the Death Star, which had still been destroyed on Alderaan, had dealt a sizable blow to the Imperial defense policy that had been created by Tarkin. While many in the galaxy believed Palpatine's narratives regarding the peaceful space station being targeted by the rebels, many of the citizens of Alderaan fought back, pushing against the propaganda being circulated by the Empire regarding the destruction of Alderaan. Luke and Obi-Wan continue to train in the forests of Alderaan, remaining hidden from the grasp of the new tyrannical governor. Their stories inspire hope within the population, who are still being ruled by fear. In addition, the Inquisitors continue to hunt the galaxy for the remaining Jedi, their search now intensified due to the urgency of Luke's capture. While the Empire had been dealt a blow by the destruction of their precious superweapon, so had the rebels after the Organa family was imprisoned by the Imperials. Despite the Empire's attempts to maintain order, conflict is still brewing with the continued dissemination of Republican ideology. How does this story continue from here? Let's find out. Our narrative picks off with Han and Chewie delivering a discreet shipment of supplies to Luke and Obi-Wan in the forests of Alderaan. Oftentimes, they would bring in the news of what was going on in the larger galaxy. Luke and Obi-Wan often tried to convince them to formally join the rebellion, and it appeared that their pleas had finally paid off. After an encounter with a vicious Imperial governor in the Outer Rim, Han had decided that he had seen enough of their cruelty. While he had initially been ambivalent to the struggles of the rest of the galaxy and was just trying to get a few bucks so that he could survive, watching the true might and unchecked force of the Empire with regards to how this governor had treated him had finally driven him over the edge. The pair refused to elaborate any further, simply saying that this governor had been a very bad man. Han also told Luke that the shipping regulations had become far more strict after this new governor had taken over Alderaan. As a matter of fact, this may very well have been Han's last delivery to the Jedi pair. At this, Luke and Obi-Wan were a little bit stunned. They ask Han how bad things are out there for the citizens of the rest of the planet. Han replies by telling them that censorship, propaganda, and policing are at an all-time high. He also tells them that the new governor has a background in the ISB, and that he was trained by Alderaan himself before he had been killed aboard the Death Star. The new governor is also a heavy supporter of the rule-by-fear methods of the Tarkin doctrine, and he had an incredibly Machiavellian approach to his reign. Han says that he's often featured on Imperial talk shows, and he brags about how under his leadership, crime and unemployment on Alderaan were at an all-time low, and that he's a darling in the eyes of the Imperial High Command. However, he also informs them that there's still hope. Small resistance cells have formed around the planet, and they work in the shadows to undermine his regime with the support of the Greater Alliance. Luke and Obi-Wan exchange glances, knowing that they had been waiting in the shadows for far too long. Han says that Mon Mothma wanted them to return to the fight, and that they would be taken off-world right now by him and Chewie. The Jedi agree, and Han manages to smuggle them off-world under the cover of darkness, ready to finally go back to the galaxy and fight the Empire. Before returning to Hoth to meet with the rest of the Rebel High Command, Obi-Wan asks if they can make a pit stop at Dagobah to quickly visit Grandmaster Yoda. Han obliges and the Falcon lands on the planet near Yoda's hut. When Obi-Wan greets Yoda, they share a special moment of reunion, happy to see one another after all of these years. Luke meets Yoda for the first time, who's impressed by his abilities in the Force. Yoda says that there's no doubt that he's the son of Skywalker, and that makes Luke beam with pride. At the same time, though, because Obi-Wan had told Luke about his father during their training together, this also worries him a little bit. Luke does not want to fall like Anakin did. Yoda senses this apprehension in Luke, and he tells him that everything will be fine, especially since he exemplifies the qualities of a true Jedi. Obi-Wan asks Yoda if he knows where any of the remaining Jedi are hidden, and perhaps they could help the rebel cause. Yoda lets out a pensive sound, trying to say that he believed that most of the Jedi had been hunted down recently, especially with the improved capacity of the Inquisitors. However, he had seen visions of the old order still being alive, and he had often dreamed of the young Padawan Ahsoka Tano still being active in the galaxy. Obi-Wan asks Yoda if he will go with them on their quest, and to his surprise, the Ancient Master actually agrees. He tells Obi-Wan with a little Yoda laugh that he's been waiting on Dagobah for too long, and that now was the time for him to return to the galaxy, even if he was rapidly aging. Yoda wants to do some good in the galaxy again, and he believes that he can help continue to train Luke effectively. Obi-Wan, who still has some old codes from the Clone Wars, ends up using a Hail Mary, and he calls Captain Rex, who he really isn't expecting to answer. To his surprise, though, Rex does pick up, and Obi-Wan is elated. He's happy to see that some of the old stuff he had during the Clone Wars still worked. Rex says that it's good to see his old friend, and Obi-Wan asks if he had ever heard anything from Commander Tano following the war. Rex smiles, and he says that he still heard from her constantly. They had gone off on some crazy adventures together, and Rex tells him about how some of her old friends got him back into the fight during the Rebels series. He also says that both of them are still working to undermine the Empire, and that they've actually been with the rebellion for years. Obi-Wan tells Rex that he has the son of Anakin with him, and that he thinks Ahsoka would be a valuable mentor to the young man. Rex sends Obi-Wan coordinates on a secure channel, telling him that this was the site of the rebel base on Hoth, after they'd been forced to relocate. Rex says that General Dodonna, Mon Mothma, and many others will be happy to have them back in the fight, and that soon they are planning on launching an organized offensive against the Empire across the galaxy. Obi-Wan lets Luke and Yoda know where they're going, and they're quite excited. Once the Jedi reach Hoth with Han and Chewie, they're immediately welcomed with open arms by the rebel leadership. Mon Mothma is happy to have them on board, and she says that tales of Luke and Obi-Wan have been spreading like wildfire. Many had joined their cause because they had heard tales of the return of the Jedi, and Mon was looking forward to revealing them to the galaxy in this next offensive. Ahsoka is also there, and she hugs Obi-Wan, who she has not seen in years. She bows to Master Yoda, and she shakes Luke's hand, telling him that he reminded her of his father. Luke smiles, pleased by this comment. She tells him that despite Anakin being dead, she still had hope that the monstrous Vader could be defeated. Sabine, at this point, is still with Ahsoka as her apprentice, and she also ends up shaking hands with Luke, happy to meet him. She says that she has a lot to tell him about when they had more time, and Luke says that he looks forward to it. Mon Mothma brings the Jedi into the briefing room, and she explains her plan to the group. Each cell on the planet with Alliance sympathies would be launching coordinated guerrilla strikes on crucial Imperial targets on their worlds. The idea of this was not only to gain some ground and liberate certain planets, but also to send a message. Mon knew that every cell would be successful. In a way, even if they weren't actually successful in overthrowing the Imperial government on worlds like Coruscant. However, she hopes that if this attack is a success, which she knows it will be, it will continue to show the galaxy that there is hope. She tells the Jedi that if they agreed to do it, they would be leading a strike team on the Inquisitor's palace on Nur, as they were the most qualified to confront their force powers. Each of the Jedi agree, understanding that they might not make it out alive. Mon says that the rebels will all receive a signal when the time is right. Rebel slicers would go into the holonet and project one of her speeches to the galaxy, and the attack would commence. Everyone knows what's going to happen, and the Force wielders grab an old, commandeered Imperial shuttle to take to Nur. Rex, knowing many of the codes that the Imperials still use from the Clone Wars, agrees to be their pilot. Other Rebel members join them, clothed in stormtrooper garments. When the time was right, additional forces would come to Nur in the sky as well. As the Rebels approach Nur, all of the Jedi can sense something dark there. Luke feels the presence of the same Dark Lord who he had battled in the skies above Alderaan all of those years ago, and his stomach drops. Obi-Wan and Ahsoka look at each other, their mouths dropping to the floor in shock. Vader was here. Hopefully, he did not sense their presence as well. Soon, the battle for the fate of the galaxy would begin. Rex is cleared to land on Nur by the Imperial codes. He ends up getting the rebel group through with no issue and says that they're bringing in Ahsoka and Sabine as prisoners for the Inquisitors to deal with. All of the Jedi gathered here are incredibly nervous. Yoda, knowing that he would stand out, decides to remain on the ship until the trap is sprung with Rex. Shortly after landing, a view screen in the hangar on Nur begins to short out from the normal Imperial propaganda that it broadcasts. The technicians start to scramble as Mon Mothma comes onto the screen and starts broadcasting her message of hope across the galaxy. The troopers switch to high alert, and the rebels drop their disguises. The Jedi start to mow down the troopers, peacefully settling into their role. Ahsoka, still having a different philosophy from the rest of her Jedi colleagues, attempts to conserve the lives of those around her, trying to immobilize and not kill the stormtroopers where possible. Sabine wields Ezra's old lightsaber with ease, and Yoda comes out of the ship with Rex to begin causing some chaos in the hangar bay. In that moment, Mon Cala cruisers appear in the sky, and more of a ground assault from the rebels begins on the fortress. Because the Imperials had no idea about this coming, they start to scramble. ISB had clearly dropped the ball on this one, especially after the death of Yularen, and even the Inquisitors are flustered. Vader, though, keeps his cool. He senses the presence of the child that he had met on Alderaan, and he marches his way to meet him. While the Inquisitors allow their rage to blind them, plowing through the rebels who are infiltrating the fortress with maniacal ease, Vader sees the Jedi, and he marches towards them with ferocity. Yoda leaps towards him, but his old age pales in comparison to the might of Vader's mastery of the dark side. He is the chosen one, after all. He catches Yoda midair with the Force and tosses him to the side like he's green garbage. He then turns his attention to Sabine, who still hasn't noticed him. Vader picks her up with the Force and slams her back into the ground, not killing her, but putting her out of commission for the rest of the battle. Vader then sees Ahsoka, and he sternly remarks how she now had a new apprentice, and she clearly hadn't trained her well. Ahsoka leaps towards Vader, Luke and Obi-Wan quickly following suit. Rex blasts a few bolts his way, but Vader pulls a Kylo and stops them with the Force, pushing them back at Rex, who dives out of the way to avoid them. Vader quickly slays Obi-Wan, who is also incredibly old. Luke screams at Vader, angry with this. He's about to jump at the Dark Lord, but Ahsoka stops him. She says to Vader that she can still feel good in him, and that she knows he can be redeemed. Vader continues to attack her with his lightsaber, and Ahsoka merely parries. Luke takes a step back, remembering what his elders had taught him about the Jedi. He tells Vader that he agrees with Ahsoka, and that he knows that he is his son. This makes Vader take pause, and he remarks about how Luke knows that he is the son of Anakin. Luke says that he does know, and then Vader offers the two the chance to join him. Both Ahsoka and Luke refuse. However, in this scene, there's one more variable that comes into play. Rex, who's been working with the rebellion, calls Vader General Skywalker, and he begins regaling the Dark Lord with tales of the past. Ahsoka jumps in, reminding Vader of everything that he had fought for as Anakin. They tell him of the man that he used to be, the man with whom Padme had fallen in love. Anakin was a good man, despite his flaws. Vader, on the other hand, well, he was just pure evil, and all he was feared. For a moment, Anakin shines through. He remembers the days of old, and he now sees that there are people who still care for him other than just Sidious. The Emperor had robbed him of love, affection, and of a good life. Now, he was just a machine. The Jedi sense a shift in Vader as he deactivates his lightsaber and embraces his son in the midst of the battle. Ahsoka's jaw drops, and Rex nods. There was the General Skywalker that they had remembered. Immediately, Vader switches sides. He's locked in, and he begins to fight alongside his son and his former apprentice. He admits that he's sorry that he killed Obi-Wan and harmed the other two Jedi. His anger at Palpatine for brainwashing him begins to come back into his mind, and Anakin uses a mixture of the light and dark sides to engage his opponents. Even when the Inquisitors arrive, Anakin handles them with ease. He's trained them, so he knows how they fight. Eventually, with the help of an attack force in the sky, and with Anakin's assistance, the rebels take the stronghold on Nur. Across the galaxy, the attacks have gone in a similar fashion. Han and Chewie lead a successful revolt against the tyrant governor of Alderaan, and more uprisings across the galaxy results in the Imperials being deposed. In the core, there's a much quicker end to the revolts. However, the galaxy has spoken, and the rebellion now has enough systems to create a formalized new republic. In the attack on Coruscant, a rebel crew is able to infiltrate the Imperial prison and rescue the Organas, bringing them back to Alderaan to reinstate their claim to the throne. The Emperor is angry, and he begins to consolidate more power over his military, his Moffs, and his governors. He becomes a lot more hands-on in the government, and the Empire is still strong in the core worlds. However, after a few years more of training, Anakin, Luke, Yoda, and Sabine are able to lead an assassination attempt against the Emperor. They sneak into his palace, and while he's sleeping, by concealing their presences in the Force, they're able to kill him and claim the throne for themselves. Luke, Ahsoka, Anakin, and Sabine grant control of Coruscant to the New Republic, now headed by Mon Mothma, and things start to settle down in the galaxy. The Jedi start to rebuild their old order, and the New Republic continues to find and prosecute Imperial warlords across the galaxy. How do these events impact the end of our story? Let's find out. Finally, the New Republic is able to rebuild. While many initially distrust Vader, they start to see that he truly has changed, and those who were initially suspicious of him see his true colors. He paints his suit white, and Luke gives him his old lightsabers back. Vader apologizes to the galaxy for his crimes, and because of his role in the rebellion, he's let off by Republic leadership during his trial. When Bail retires from the Senate, Leia takes his place, and eventually she becomes the new chancellor. She's a pacifist, but she acknowledges the need for a strong standing military, unlike Mon Mothma. So, just as the Jedi are rebuilding, so too does Leia begin to fortify the ranks of the New Republic, just in case any new Imperials were to rise up and try to re-establish the Empire. The galaxy is at peace. Freedom is restored, and the citizens are committed to rebuilding the government into one which protects their rights. The Jedi are returning, and the people are happy again. For the first time in a very long time, the galaxy has found peace. Perhaps Anakin really was the chosen one after all. Hello there, friends. I hope that you enjoyed the first sequel installment. If you did, I'd recommend checking out the part 1 to this video if you haven't already. What if Vader stopped Alderaan's destruction? If you have any thoughts on this follow-up chapter, please share them in the comments. Would you like to see this story continued even further? If so, how do you think that events would play out? Have an absolutely bantatacular rest of your day, Star Wars nerds, and as always, I hope that you've had your delicious daily dose of Bantha Stew.